Just how rich was Solomon? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Kings on walking through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Kings chapter 10, verses 14 to 29. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 14. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Kings chapter 10, beginning of verse 14. The weight of gold that came to Solomon yearly was 666 talents of gold, besides that from the traveling merchants, from the income of traders, from all the kings of Arabia, and from the governors of the country. And King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 600 shekels of gold went into each shield. He also made 300 shields of hammered gold. 3 minas of gold went into each shield. The king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with pure gold. The throne had 6 steps, and the top of the throne was round at the back. There were armrests on either side of the place of the seat, and 2 lions stood beside the armrests. 12 lions stood there, one on each side of the 6 steps. Nothing like this had been made in any other kingdom. All of King Solomon's drinking vessels were gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. Not one was silver, for this was accounted as nothing in the days of Solomon. For the king had merchant ships at sea with the fleet of Hiram. Once every 3 years the merchant ships came bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and monkeys. So King Solomon surpassed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. Now all the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. Each man brought his presents, articles of silver and gold, garments, armor, spices, horses, and mules, at a set rate year by year. And Solomon gathered chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, whom he stationed in the chariot cities and with the king at Jerusalem. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and he made cedar trees as abundant as the sycamores which are in the lowland. Also Solomon had horses imported from Egypt in Keva. The king's merchants brought them in Keva at the current price. Now a chariot that was imported from Egypt cost 600 shekels of silver, and a horse 150, and thus, through their agents, they exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Syria. In the last lesson, we had the Queen of Sheba coming to visit Solomon. She had heard of his immense wisdom and great wealth, but rather than just accepting what she heard as fact, she went to investigate for herself whether what was told to her was so. And when she visited Solomon, she proclaimed that in fact what was told to her wasn't even half of the story, for Solomon's wisdom far exceeded what was described. Solomon and the queen exchanged gifts, and she returned to her homeland. But let's not think of this visit as insignificant, for Jesus mentions it in the New Testament to condemn the people of his day for not listening to his wisdom. Jesus told them that the Queen of Sheba traveled a great distance to hear the wisdom of Solomon. Meanwhile, a man wiser than Solomon was among them, and they couldn't be bothered to travel a short distance. Coming now to verse 14, and we get the summary of just how wealthy the kingdom of Solomon was. What we find is that yearly Solomon received 666 talents of gold. Now, a talent of gold weighed about 34 kilograms or 75 pounds. That means that each year Solomon obtained 22,644 kilograms or 49,950 pounds of gold. In 2023 money, that would be 1.8 billion Canadian dollars or 1.4 billion US dollars in just gold. And on top of that, Solomon received income from traveling merchants, traders, and the neighboring kings in Arabia. So over a 40-year reign, if this income remains steady, Solomon accumulated well over 72 billion Canadian dollars or 56 billion US dollars. Now, of course, Solomon didn't simply collect this money and do nothing with it. He made shields of gold and placed them in the house of the forest of Lebanon, a part of his palace we read back in chapter 7. He also used his gold to overlay his throne of ivory. This throne had 6 steps up to it, a rounded back, armrests on both sides of the seat, with crafted lions standing beside the armrests. On each of the steps stood 1 lion on each side of the throne, totaling 12 in total, likely representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Clearly, this was a magnificent throne, for no other kingdom had anything like it. But Solomon's use of gold didn't stop there. All his drinking vessels were gold, as were all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon. Nothing was silver, because Solomon treated silver as if it was worthless, even though it wasn't. That's how wealthy Solomon was, in that he considered cheap what others would know to be quite valuable. It's sort of like today a billionaire viewing $100,000 as nothing, whereas to most people, that's a lot of money. Now, this doesn't mean that Solomon didn't possess silver, for he did. It's just that he valued it a lot less. Having this knowledge about Solomon and his wealth will certainly make his warnings against it in the book of Ecclesiastes make all the more sense. So it was during Solomon's reign that not only did he become rich, but he became famous because of his wisdom. People came to hear the wisdom given Solomon from God, bringing gifts when they came, making Solomon even richer. However, Solomon's reign is going to come to a tragic end, not because he was wealthy, but because his wealth and power led him away from God. We'll talk about that, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 1 to 13, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.